Playboi Carti has been one of the hottest artists in the rap scene for years now. His unique and controversial style have made him stand out from the crowd, and there's one key thing that acts as the foundation for all of his success: his insane production. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into all the genius production techniques used in Carti's records and make two of our own beats inspired by some of the hardest songs on his new album, Music. The beats continue to get crazier as the video goes on, so stay tuned. We've got a ton to unpack, and there's so many gems in here that you can apply to your beats. So sit back and get ready to go into the anthemic, unique world of Playboi Carti's production. Carti has been one of the most talked about artists ever since his run in 2024 with songs like Hood by Air, Carnival with Kanye, Backrooms with Travis Scott, and a bunch of other YouTube releases that were building up a ton of hype throughout that year. These songs had super dark, unique production to them, and I'm going to get into those hard-hitting vibes later on in the video for a beat switch. Songs like Evil Jordan, K-pop, Hood by Air, etc. But first, I wanted to dive into the more wavy side on this music album, with songs like Rather Lie, Backdoor, I See You Baby Boy, etc. And on a lot of these records, you can hear these melodic vocal samples that really just breathe life into the production. These all sound super fire, but if you specifically listen to Rather Lie with The Weeknd, you can hear this 1/8 note chopped kind of stuttering vocal sample. That vocal gives me old Clams Casino vibes, and I just love how it sounds, that ethereal, ambient kind of vibe. So I wanted to do something similar, and I needed a vocal sample. So I went into the brand new Mini Stash 3 kit and found this raw vocal.
Yeah, you know I love you. I do.
Once I had that raw vocal, I needed to go in and flip it into that ethereal kind of chopped vibe. So let's go in the computer to do that. So essentially, we have this dry vocal right here, right?
Yeah, you know I love you.
What I'm going to do is just drag this down into a quick sampler right here. And then you're going to go to slice and keep it on transient. So essentially what it's doing is every time there's a big spike in the audio file, it's making a chop. And then when you play it on the keyboard, you'll have a bunch of these short little 1-note chops. So then you want to set the sampler to mono so only one can play. Listen to how each sample cuts off when I hit a new chop. You don't want them overlapping with each other. Then you're just going to go in here and drag the attack a little bit, make it a little softer. Then you're going to want to just play around on the keyboard till you find some chops you like. And I found these ones. Sounds kind of goofy when it's dry right now. Then once you throw on a heavy reverb, a little bit of EQ, and also a subtle distortion, you get something like this. Once I had that vocal, I listened to Fine Shit, and you can hear this subtle synth key pad kind of sound that's just building out around the vocal sample.
My bitch so bad she can't even post all night.
So I grabbed this Motorola pad from the Mini Stash 3 analog lab bank, and I put down this go-to chord progression for those ethereal cloud rap kind of vibes. Then I chopped it up every 8th bar, just like the vocal sample we had earlier, and you get this. So like I said, this is a go-to chord progression for that ethereal kind of vibe. And if we delete everything but this first chord and then move this up an octave, you can see that this is a G major 7th chord. So you want to start with one major 7 chord and then just copy it over on the next chord hit. And then you want to pitch it up 5 semitones or down 5 semitones. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you get this. And if I move all of these notes up an octave, you get the basis of our chord progression. Now that we have the main idea with the vocal sample and that synth pad, it's time to build it out. And if you listen to I See You Baby Boy, you can hear that they're using the same 1/8 note Clams Casino vocal chop, but instead of it being super chill and ambient, it's more of a bright melodic rage kind of style, and I feel like it just works really well. If If you skip forward a little bit on that song, you can hear this super fast and high energy synth ARP sound that just adds a bunch of that futuristic new Carti kind of sound. So I copied the chords that we had made on that synth pad onto 3 new sounds, some bright synth chords and 2 fast-paced synth ARPs. And all these presets came from the Mini Stash 3 analog lab bank. Take a listen to how when we build on top with each sound, it continues to sound crazier. Sounding pretty fire. By now, you've probably caught on to me talking about this Mini Stash 3, which I've used for every single sound in the melodies so far. It's my brand new kit that's only $7 and it has vocal chops, live instrument phrases, presets, and a ton of amazing sounds that'll help you level up your beats. And for the first 200 people who buy it, you'll get a $40 gift card. So it'll kind of be like you're profiting, what, $33 by buying the kit. But I think those first 200 are going to sell out super fast. So make sure you check out that first link in the description down below to check out the Mini Stash. Like I said, it's got a ton of crazy vocals, synth preset, live instrument stuff, and even over 20 full melody loops. And both the melodies that I'm making in this video today are included in the kit. So if you want some crazy new sounds for the price of your next Starbucks order, make sure to check that out. Anyways, let's get back into the video. At this point, we have the majority of the melody done. So at this point, I just kind of want to add cool little elements just to kind of act as ear candy here and there. And one of these cool elements that I love on this album is that stuttering glitch effect that you can hear on Wake Up Filthy.
Wake up, wake up.
I thought this stutter at the end of every 2 bars would fit perfectly with that 8th chop stuttering vocal that we have. So I bounced that bright synth MIDI down into an audio file and I chopped up the end of each 2 bars to get this. Now I wanted to add one more sound for a 3rd section of this melody, and I really love the distorted guitar sample that you can hear on Cocaine Nose, which is actually a sample from an old Ashanti song.
Only you can make me feel, and only you can take me. Wake up, filthy.
This guitar has so much attitude and fits that rage kind of sound that Carti's known for. So to add that vibe into our beat, I grabbed this stock Logic guitar sound and I copied the chords from earlier, but instead of all the notes coming in at once, I arpeggiated them to kind of simulate someone actually playing it on the guitar. And you get this, which sounds really cheap right now, but bear with me. So obviously, this sounds nothing like that heavy metal, distorted rock guitar kind of tone that we're going for. The key to adding that sound is adding a ton of distortion to really just crush the audio and destroy it. So to get this kind of sound, I used a stock guitar amp plugin from Logic, and I made sure it was super distorted to really morph the sound. As you can hear, that distortion is such a key part into getting that new wave Carti kind of sound, so much so that I even added it onto those synths that I had played you earlier. And on the synths, it's a much more subtle distortion. It's not meant to completely destroy the audio like it is on the guitar, but it just kind of dirties the tone up a little bit and adds that gritty rage kind of feeling. And side note, I did the distortion on that with an upcoming plugin I'm working on, so keep your eyes out for that. But anyways, now we've got the melody 100% finished, and it's time to get into a key part of Carti's sound. The drums. There were a few things that I kept hearing all over the drums on this album that I felt I just had to use. The first being super busy open hat patterns like the ones you can hear on Fine Shit. The second thing is this off snare pattern that we'll talk a little bit more about in the second beat. Essentially, the second snare is not playing where it's supposed to be playing. Third, I also noticed a ton of these 16th note hi-hat rolls like the ones that you can hear on Olympian and I See You Baby Boy. So I got looking through my drum sounds and found these open hats, a snare, and some hi-hats that fit that new Carti sound. And when you put those 3 key elements together, you get this. So So I added those weird snare stomp kind of sound, and of course, a cowbell, which you hear all over the tracks that Carto produced on this album. With all that, you get this. Finally, to finish off these drums, I took some inspiration from the super punchy and bouncy 808 pattern on Backdoor. So I found a punchy 808 and put down this pattern. And with the melody and the drums together, it's sounding crazy. And I'll play the full beat later, but first I want to do a crazy switch up with a dark, hard beat inspired by songs like Evil Jordan, Crank, Hood by Air, etc.
I'm seeing that hoe out the water. Put him in the cuff. Put him in the cuff. Put him in.
On Evil Jordan, he had that super wavy ambient intro that built up into that big beat drop where it switched up into the main song. So I thought going from that first wavy melodic kind of beat that we had just made and then transitioning it into this dark beat would just be perfect and kind of go along with that theme. And if you look at the production credits on this album, most of these dark kind of songs are produced by one main producer, Carto Got Wings. And in this interview with Producer Grind, Carto talks about what he's looking for whenever he's looking for melodies to use for these kind of beats.
Yeah, I usually look for like something that's just different, abstract shit. Ambience, like definitely, I feel like ambience is just forever, you know what I'm saying? Just atmospheric shit. Something that sounds a little bit tonal, even on the darker side. I need like tonal, darker shit. Like almost like some, like you on a high speed chase type shit.
So essentially what I took from that is that he's not necessarily looking for loops that have a super catchy melody, but it's more just the tone and texture of the loop that he's looking for. So for this beat, I want to go for some dark, weird kind of sounds to build out the melody. And I think a great example of this weird synthy kind of melody is on Evil Jordan. That repetitive synth hit is pretty much the whole foundation for this beat. And like I said earlier, it's not even necessarily a melody, more just like a weird trippy accent that's hitting over and over. So to do the same thing, I grabbed this tripped out preset from Mini Stash 3 and put down this super dark dissonant chord that hits every 2 bars. Now that I had that, I listened to Hood by Air, which is another song produced by Carto, and you can hear these high synth strings that just kind of build out this evil, dark feeling of the beat. So I grabbed a similar synth string kind of sound and put down the super simple 2-note dark melody that I layered across 2 different octaves. And these are really just there to add atmosphere and kind of fill it out. Next up, I wanted to take some inspo from K-pop, where you can hear these dark, heavy metal guitars that are kind of filling out the low end of the melody. And again, on this song, the guitars aren't even really adding that much melody, but they're more just like supporting sounds that add this low, mean, gritty kind of feeling. So I came up with a little bass line pattern on that VST guitar I had used earlier and got this. Next up for a B section, I wanted to add some high notes on that guitar, just add a little bit more melody in there. And when you combine that top line with the low guitar chords, you get this. Sounding pretty sick. Next up, I loved the beat for Charge Them Hoes a Fee. First thing that stuck out to me with this melody was that bouncy triplet staccato string kind of melody. So I grabbed one of these plucky string presets from East West Opus and I put down this super simple dark pattern and I made sure to use triplets so that it's kind of adding this different bounce to the beat. That sounds okay, but like Carto was talking about, the tone and sound of these melodies is really important to getting that Carti kind of vibe. So I didn't leave it dry like I just played you, and I added a little bit of half speed, a filter cutting off some of the high end, and some distortion using my effect plugin again. And I did all that just to make it sound more gritty, sampled, and kind of mean sounding. Once I had that, the melody was pretty much done. But once again, I took some inspiration from Wake Up Filthy, where they do that stutter kind of thing at the end of every 2 bars. So I did the same thing and bounced the whole melody down into one audio file. And then at the end of every 4 bars, I did that little repetitive chop kind of thing. And I think doing things like this really just adds to that futuristic electronic music kind of sound that Carti has in a lot of his songs. Finally, to finish this off, I was just hearing one more sound to build out that evil opium kind of vibe, a choir. You can hear Carti on this type of stuff in his work with Kanye on Carnival. There's also a super fire choir that's on Crush off of his new album.
Private session, roll out them X's when I'm on Melrose. She tatted my name on her titties.
So I went into Omnisphere and grabbed this choir sound, and then I just copied the bass guitar MIDI from earlier, just so everything was cohesive and working together. Added that on top of the melody, and you get this. Once I added that, the melody was 100% finished. So it's time to finish this video off strong with some crazy Carto-inspired drums. Similar to the first beat, there are a few key ingredients to getting this sound. Number 1, again, super busy open hats, and then number 2, an unorthodox off snare pattern. While I was listening to these songs, it really just felt like these 2 elements were what really was dictating the bounce and kind of direction of the drums. So I want you to listen to these records, specifically looking for the open hat and the snare patterns to just see how they're working together and how unique the bounce is on it.
You niggas don't like me. The bitch wanna fight me. I teach her. Back in my day.
I love the bounce on all those records and is exactly what I wanted to go for this beat. And to start, I did the signature Carto snare pattern that he's been using recently, where essentially he just takes the typical snare pattern, but then the second snare, instead of having it hit on each half bar, you move it over 1 quarter note to the left, so it just plays 1 quarter note earlier than normal. Then you want to grab a few open hat sounds so that you can kind of do this A and B call and response kind of thing with them. And you really want some that play a little bit delayed, like this. Then once you find some open hats, you want to create that busy, bouncy kind of pattern where they're kind of playing off of each other, kind of doing that call and response thing I was talking about. Once I had that, I wanted to lock in the bounce with a super simple 2-step hi-hat pattern that you can hear on Philly, Toxic, and Crank. But on Hood by Air, there's this cool low-pitched triplet roll that happens at the end of every few bars. So I did that simple 2-step pattern, but I added that little triplet roll at the end just to kind of take some inspiration from Hood by Air, and you get this. Then I added a cowbell and a distorted stomp kind of snare. You can actually hear both of these kind of sounds on Toxic. I didn't grab these exact sounds they used in that song, but after adding it to our drums, you get this. Finally, I wanted to do an 808 similar to Philly, where it's kind of jumping around quite a bit in the pitch. So I essentially just copied that bass line that we had made with the electric guitar to make sure, 1, that I was following the root notes of the progression, but 2, I feel like the 808s just jumping up and down in pitch kind of add to that vibe that the album has. And once I had that, I was almost done. But now I wanted to add one of the most controversial and most hated on sounds that you can hear all over this album. All jokes aside, I kind of like the snare rolls on this album. I know they've been getting a terrible rap, so let me know in the comments down below if you like the gunshots, snare rolls, and that Swamp Izzo tag. Even though these sounds are super obnoxious, I actually felt like they would transition our first beat into our second beat really nicely. So I added a gunshot and that snare roll that you can hear all over the album, and then the beat was 100% finished. Hope you enjoyed that one. And just a quick reminder, if you want to get almost every sound I used in this video and both of those full loops that I cooked up in this video, you can grab all of that for only $7 in the brand new Mini Stash 3 kit, and it'll be the first link in the description down below. But that's all for me. Have a good one. Peace.